People tuning in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the triumphant return of the check-in. I'm JJ Sexton. I'm here with my friend Danielle Moody. It's so good to see you. We were just talking about how we missed each other last week. How you doing?
You know, I did it's so and you just said it's so funny how that works. We've been doing this for several months.
Yeah.
I really look forward to it. I mean, I'm in conversation all week, but I got to tell you that this is the one that I really look forward to because it's the only conversation that doesn't follow the headlines, that follows the feelings instead. And so it's like my midweek break from
Yep.
breaking news. How am I doing? No. I
Yep.
feel very on one hand, I feel incredibly hopeful, which is weird, for me. I feel incredibly hopeful about little signals and little
Yep.
cracks that we are seeing that one that this machine, this MAGA machine is penetrable, right? I think that we've kind of been operating in this space that that they are impenetrable, that they are growing, they're metastasizing and all of these things. And I think that where my hope is coming in, my mustard seed of hope that I talk about all the time, is that there are obvious, huge
Yep.
cracks that we are seeing. It doesn't mean that the cruelty is going to stop. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a de-escalation in violence and weaponizing fear, but it means that I think that it's necessary for us to see that these are deeply flawed, deeply stupid humans that are going to spell their own ends. Do you know what I'm saying? And all we need to do is just kind of just keep pushing, them closer and closer to the cliff that they are careening towards. But how am I feeling? It's like a couple of weeks until 2026. And I am just like, I can't believe it's going to be 2026.
Danielle, as your friend, I have to say you're committing violence right now,
I know. I know.
reminding people of
My
time
whole
passage.
my whole Instagram is committing violence because every single every single thing is like there's just a couple of weeks left in 2025 and I don't know about you, Jared, but like I still haven't recovered from the first 5 years of the 2020s. Like spiritually, emotionally, every time that the calendar year changes, it's like there's a part of me that still feels very stuck and stuck in trying to understand what we've been collectively going through over the last 5 years. So the fact that my God, that we're closer to like we're in the midst, we're closer to 2030 than we are to like anything else is kind of it's like really mind blowing for me right now.
This is supposed to be a safe space and you're doing everyone real dirty. And I'm disappointed in it. I think, and one of the reasons I look forward to this is because I do think it's incredibly important to have people in your life that you can reflect back and forth, right? You can sit down and say, oh, that's how I'm feeling as well. It's a thought that I haven't been able to sort of articulate. And because I'm an old academic, I always feel the need to scaffold, basically to tell
Hmm.
people, hey, this is what's happening. This is
Yeah.
where we've been leading up to. Our conversations have been leading up to moments like this, right?
Yeah.
We had it a couple of weeks ago where we had talked earlier about things are going to be tough during this period, and then there are going to be victories, and you need to savor those victories.
Yeah.
We talked, I want to say, a month and a half ago, 2 months
Mhm.
ago, about how there are going to be moments of great discomfort that we have to learn to be more comfortable with.
Mhm.
And what's happening right now is a moment of discomfort that, because you and I have talked about this, and because we've looked at this situation clearly and been honest about it, and I assume the people watching and listening have as well, we are now prepared to be more comfortable in the discomfort of a moment like this.
Yes.
Because let's go ahead and let's just kind of put together exactly what's happening right now. We have a fascist, criminal, incompetent president
Mhm.
who all signs indicate, because I'm doing my due legal diligence, that might have been engaged in some monstrous crimes. And those monstrous crimes, we're getting more and more information about it, to the point where it's not only people who criticize Trump who are starting to see the truth. We've seen the truth for a while. We've
Yeah.
known this. The people who support him, many of them are starting to say, hey, I think there's fire where that smoke is. Right?
Mhm.
So the truth is starting to come out. On top of that, Danielle, we're sitting on top of one of the largest economic bubbles that we have ever seen. And why is there a giant economic bubble? It's for the same reason that the president of the United States of America is Donald Trump, who is engaged in these crimes with a bunch of elites of both parties, all ideologies. It's because this system has been so rigged in the favor of a wealthy class of elites that they're not competent, they're not intelligent, they're not
Mhm.
creative. The game was rigged, and they came to believe that they were all super geniuses. And in fact, they're dumbasses. And
Yeah.
the only thing they're good at is momentary crookery. That's it. They're
Yeah.
able to
Yep.
steal money and create basically pyramid schemes and shell games that can make them wealthy while destroying everything else. So all of these things are lining up. Also, you and I and other people can feel it. There's a tension in the inhumanity and brutality and corruption of this moment. So, what's occurring? Why are we feeling like this? We're feeling like this because we have been riding on a train that has been rocking back and forth on the tracks. It's going too fast. It wasn't built correctly. It's nearing its expiration date. So, what are we waiting for? We're waiting for the derailment that we knew was coming.
Yeah.
What are we doing? We're preparing ourselves for that while keeping an eye on the future of basically like, oh my God, we have been in an incredibly dysfunctional, unhealthy environment for a very long time.
Yep.
And we have gotten tired of it. And eventually, when you wake up and when you pay attention to it, that discomfort grows and grows and grows. And there's an irritation to it and an anger to it. And instead of being locked into it and being like, God, I really hope this train doesn't crash, you sort of have a moment where you're like, man, this train might have to crash. This thing might need to come off the rails in order for us to get off this train. I hope it doesn't hurt as many people as it could hurt. I hope in some way or another this works out in the best way possible where we can figure out something in the future. And what you brought up about time, I think, is really important because what do? We spend so much time waiting to live our lives. We make
Mhm.
so many arguments for ourselves. Well, I'll be able to do this when I get my money right. I'll be able to do
Yep.
this when I get
Yep.
my career right. I'll be able to do this when I get this. And what happens is you spend so much time trying to get things right while everything is going wrong that you're not addressing what's going wrong. And we're finally to the point where you can't deny what's going wrong. You now have to think about, oh my God, this thing doesn't work. This thing is nearing some type of a conclusion. And instead of grieving that thing, instead of lashing ourselves to that thing, we now have to see this through clear eyes and start to recognize what is possible versus what has come before.
And I all of that is so clear and so right and helps us make sense of this kind of in between place that we
Yeah.
find ourselves in, right? It's some type of purgatory that we
A
find
liminal space.
ourselves in, right? It's like an emotional purgatory where we're trying to grapple with the fact that what was told to us, the stories sold to us about the fact that America's trajectory, our life trajectory, was always going to get better, right? We were told, we were sold this idea that all of our lives, right? We were going to be better than our parents were better than our grandparents were, and so on and so forth. That there was no conversation, right, about, well, what happens when that actually doesn't happen, right? When your kids are not actually able to leave the house and buy a home and get married and start having kids at 25 in the way that you do. What happens if there isn't a job market that is open and waiting for them with open arms as soon as they get their bachelor's degree or their associate's degree or their technical degree or whatever it is? Um, so we didn't prepare.
Right.
right? We just held on to the fantasy. And as the fantasy began to change and disorient, and we find ourselves in this horror house, right? This fun house of mirrors that we're just like, well, I can still Netflix and chill. I can still, go to the movies a little bit. I can still do these entertainment things. So maybe it's not that bad. We hung on to this idea of not that bad, right? And so now I think that the grappling that we're having, and that I named around the last 5 years, is just like, you can't avoid the fact that it actually is that fucking bad, right? That we just had Donald Trump's, one of his economic advisors, just say that, oh, well, the job market has softened. I love the fucking euphemism bullshit language that they use. The job market has softened because CEOs, they're better able to now understand and utilize AI, so they're not going to be so open to hiring young people out of college. He literally said that this week.
Yep.
And I said to myself, holy shit. If I'm a parent, if I'm a caregiver that has just gone into debt for the last 4 years to send my kid to college, and you just came out on national television and said, guess what? Haha, we took your money. We're taking all you can afford to pay back is the interest. We roped you into this Ponzi scheme, and now your kid doesn't have a job. Right. And so they ain't leaving the house anytime soon because they don't have the opportunities that you once had. And I feel like we're still trying to grapple with this house of cards that they've created that is now crashing down around us. And we're trying, each of us in our silos, to hold on for dear life. Like you said, I'll use the train analogy. The train is careening. We're holding on to the emergency bars, hoping that, like, we don't go over the cliff. But the reality is that we can't just hold on to our individual bars. The only way that we're going to save ourselves is if we hold on to each other, right? And we figure out what is the human chain that we have to create so that a
Yep.
majority of us don't end up, right, wrapped up, twisted in the metal and the glass of the collision that we can clearly see is coming. Because the make believe that we've been holding on to for the last several decades, right, is now coming into full view. You've been bamboozled. You've been hoodwinked. You've been lied to. And so, what does it look like to operate now in this reality? And it's so jarring, Jared.
Yep.
It's so jarring to recognize that, like, we're all, and we talk about this all the time, that Americans are very much like stuck in this perpetual adolescence that many of us feel comfortable in being lied to, right? Because it makes us feel good. And the reality is that, like, the lie isn't holding anymore. We're trying to rationalize, why did I believe this in the first place? How was this allowed to go on for so long? And now we're entering a phase of America where the next generations are actually going to be worse off with each generation than the one before.
100%. And I want to break down what you just said. I want to give three quick anecdotes. First things first, I had a meeting last week in which the subject of AI came up, and the idea that it's going to wipe out over half of all middle class jobs,
Yeah.
right? And what did they say at the end of that conversation? They said, "Well, we'll have to have universal basic income." You live in the fucking United States of America, where we don't even have health care. Do you think in any way, shape, or form that the political class that we have right now is going to push for universal basic income? Are you insane? You're living in a magical thinking bubble.
Yep.
And on that subject, the next two things I'll say. One, I graduated from graduate school in 2008, in August of 2008. The
Oh,
economy
yeah. Yeah.
the next month, right?
Hmm.
I did the thing I was supposed to do. I left my small town. I went to college. I went to graduate school. I was going to get a job in academia. I have two close friends. Another one, he entered journalism. and moved to New York City and was successful at what he did. And guess what? That industry got destroyed. I have another friend of mine who is a surgeon. He got out of our small town. He went to college. He went to an Ivy League school. He's an incredibly like an incredibly talented surgeon. Guess what? AI is going to come in for that before he's done with his career. It just took a little while longer, right? The whole point is what you just said is that we have had this fantasy that there was a working meritocracy, that if you did the things that you were supposed to do, eventually you would arrive somewhere.
Yep.
Taking the train analogy, the train told us it was getting to a station at X time. It's not getting to the station at X time. And what can you do while you're on board of that train? You can either fret about it and get upset about it and worry about the consequences of it, or you can say, you know what? This doesn't work. It's not going to do what it told me to do. And one of the biggest problems that we have, Danielle, is that we become so wrapped up into an idea of ourselves, a story of ourselves, what it is that we're going to do, who it is that we are in the world, what it is that we're going to accomplish. At some point, as an academic, I had to look around and say, academia is fucked. It's
Mhm.
fucked beyond repair right now. And the third story I'll tell, there was a moment, I was an academic for like 17 years. And I just remember a meeting before I left where I looked around. I was like, nobody in this room is being honest. No one in this room is being real about what's happening right now. No one is talking about, they're just like, well, maybe this will work out and maybe they'll come to their senses or whatever. Those feelings, you have to look around, you have to say, oh, I am more than my job. I am more than the fantasy and story of who told myself that I am.
Yep.
And the biggest problem that humans have is when that story gets ruptured, are you able to create something new and discover who you really are, or are you so absolutely tied to that fantasy that the destruction of the fantasy destroys you?
Yes.
Because what's happening in this country is that we have people who are so tied to the lies that they tell themselves that they're
Yep.
willing to oppress brown people. They're willing to oppress gay and trans people. They're willing to oppress immigrants and the poor. They're willing to destroy anybody that they possibly can in order to keep the fantasy alive. Then there are other people who are still in denial that the fantasy's fine. It's going to keep working. It's not coming for me. It might come for that person over there. It might take their job. It's not coming for me, even while the monster is nipping at their heels.
Mm.
What we have to do at this point is we have to see this clearly. We have to understand, oh my God, we've been told a pack of lies and understand why we've been told a pack of lies, while also preparing ourselves to understand that those lies that we've been tied to, that wasn't really us.
Right.
That wasn't really who we were. We were being forced into lies that benefited a system that took everything from us and is now going to continue taking everything from us. And if you want to live in a world where people are being oppressed and you want to be living in a world where you're like, yeah, some of them are pedophiles, but they vote for the right things. Fuck you. You have to look in the mirror and realize that you are prioritizing your own comfort over the survival of people and over an actual human and ethical and moral world versus holding on to these fantasies. And what we're dealing with right now, Danielle, and I'm really glad that we're able to go on this journey together, is we're not just seeing this thing, we're preparing for each moment of realization and grief and pain. And I want to also give us credit. We're like showing right now how to do it in a healthier way. We're not
Mhm.
totally there yet because we're human, but we're actually like it's like realizing you can navigate the waves as they roll in, and that's what we're doing right now.
And I say to you, everything that you just laid out is exactly where MAGA is,
a hundred
where
percent.
they have tied themselves like an anvil to the lies,
Yep.
right? That have been perpetuated about each and every marginalized group that they don't understand, but they have found comfort, right, in those lies. And once those bubbles are burst, them themselves will be burst. So here, and I'm because I just want to help people even more so formulate around that idea. Why do they hate trans people so much? right? This is the example I use all the time. Why does MAGA hate trans people so much?
Yep.
Because trans people were, aside from the pain, right, of coming into your truth, have moved outside of this binary thinking that it's either A or B. It's either boy or girl. And the idea that you can then develop a sense of self
Yep.
that is so solidified and grounded in truth
Yep.
flies in the face of the gender construct, the orientation that they have created, that they have followed. And so when they see trans people, like, why can't you just follow the fucking rules
They
that
hate
we
their
put?
courage. That's it. They hate their courage.
They hate them
Yes.
because they model the
Yep.
kind of courage that they themselves are so desperate for
Yep.
and don't have. That's why they cosplay. That's why they cosplay the toxic masculinity. That's why they go into the manosphere. That's why they do all of these things, because what trans people have innately, right, is this strong, gorgeous sense of self, right? That beyond all societal pressures and beyond all societal violence, that they would rather live in that truth than exist and wrapped inside of a lie,
Right.
right? And so when faced with that, right, you can't help but recognize that you're a fucking coward, right? You can't help but understand. And so for people, for men in particular, cis hetero men that are so fragile, right, in their being, you then have to turn to violence to enforce, right, this sense of what you deem to be right and wrong, right? These things you can't continue to exist inside of your fantasy when other people are existing in reality, and that reality is so stark, right? So that is for me, when I look at where we are and I look at these bubbles, because we call them all bubbles, right? The dot-com bubble, the housing bubble, the this, that, and the other thing, because it's all just blowing hot air, right? It's all just blowing hot air and praying and hoping it doesn't fucking burst, right? Because we're not actually creating anything that is sustainable, right? It is only beneficial for a small group of people for a small amount of time. And that small amount of time, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 15 years. But they know that it's not sustainable, which is why they call it a bubble. Yesterday, I will say this: AOC went on gave a whole speech at a committee hearing talking about the AI bubble coming and bursting and imploring the government, which we know is going to happen, not to bail out the AI companies, right? We know that it's coming.
Hmm.
These trillionaires, billionaires, what have you, they don't use their own money to create this shit. They get embedded into government. They use our money, right? And that burst that is coming is going to affect us because they're well above it.
That's right.
And then they will be reimbursed so that they don't lose a fucking thing again with our money, right? And so it's like the more that you start to realize these things, these schemes, because that's what they are, then we have to ask ourselves, as we're moving into 2026, as we're going to move in to this midterm cycle, who do we want to represent us? Right? Like, because I don't want people that continue to blow smoke up my ass, that continue to because they're taking money from the bubble blowers, right? They're taking money to look the other way and say, I wish we could have done something, right? But we just couldn't. Meanwhile, they're fucking, playing three-card Monty with our healthcare, with our food, with our housing. That's what they're doing, right? And calling it legislation. It's just, I think that the more that we can wake up from this fantasy, even how hard that it is, the better we can prepare ourselves, the better we can steel ourselves from the derailment that we know is coming.
100%. And I'll say, it's funny we're talking about these bubbles and bursts because not only are the signals out there, I think that there's this thing that I've been thinking about for years, which is there's this, it's like a radio signal inside of ourselves that we spend so much of our lives trying not to listen to, which is why we have all of our addictions and all of our coping mechanisms, because we don't want to hear the truth about what's
Mhm.
going on. We all know it. We all know it. There's this country, it's not making anything. The most incompetent, unimaginative people. Like, the only reason the AI bubble has occurred is because they don't have anything else. They don't have any other inventions. They don't have any other innovations. And why, Danielle? Because they've rigged it so much that the most incompetent and like most morally, ethically, and imaginative, bankrupt people have gotten to the top.
Yeah.
Which it's that thing where it's like for so long, you go into a room and you meet someone with a title. And if you're not awake, you're like, oh my God, it's so incredible that they have this title. But when you become a full grown adult, you're like, I don't give a fuck about your title.
And
Like,
it honestly doesn't make any sense.
and it doesn't make any sense. And you start talking to them and you're like, oh my God, like, I'm not stupid. I'm not incompetent. This person's a fucking idiot. And how in the hell did they get into the place that they are? And I think that there's so much that's happening right now that is so elucidating. So, like, for instance, let's talk about crises, right? So 2008 happens. 2008 happens and it absolutely destroys the economy. We did not have enough evidence that things were broken at that point.
Mhm.
Like, everyone knew it and everyone sort of saw it and we all sort of had feelings about it. But like, it happens, and thank God for capitalism that Barack Obama was there to give everybody the idea of hope and change. He'll take care of it. But who was the architect behind that bailout? Larry Summers, who has, by the way, continued to be the main economist of the Democratic Party. For the record, for people who don't know this, let's pull the curtain back. This man is being given millions of dollars by who? The Democratic Party, in order to create their future economic ideas. Guess what? Larry Summers isn't going to be that available in the future. You know why? Because it's come out that even after Jeffrey Epstein was revealed as being a pedophile abuser, that he was emailing asking for advice on how to groom a young woman. So now all of a sudden, this guy who helped create the bailout of 2008 has been revealed as not only an incompetent economist, but also an absolute fucking creep who should not be trusted with things. It's good that these things are being revealed. It's good that we're starting to understand who's behind the curtain. It's good that people like Bill Clinton are being like, and by the way, he's been revealed God knows how many times. I hope the lesson sticks. All of a sudden now, you have to ask the question. It surely seems like all of the people who created the world that you and I and all these people live in, they're fucking creeps and they're incompetent. So maybe we need to do something different.
Mhm.
So maybe if this train derails, and I will, and by the way, we have to take care of each other. You know what I care about now? These stories about communities feeding each other, communities pooling their resources, coming together for mutual aid. Maybe we can survive what's coming because we're between a rock and a hard place. Either AI works and the scheme just goes forward a little bit further and the economy doesn't collapse, but we all get fucked, or it collapses and we got to figure out how to deal with being fucked. Well, now we have an opportunity. All of this stuff is being revealed. And the fact that it's bubbling up to the surface right now is not a coincidence. Because what are we learning? We're learning that the economic elites in this country are incompetent, crooks, and criminals.
Yep.
Which means, well, we have to step up and be the adults. We thought for a long time these people were the adults. It
Yep.
turns out they're not. And it's the same process that you and I and other people had to deal with our parents to
Mhm.
realize that they were not like infallible, that they were not perfect, that they weren't gods. You have to wake up and say, I'm an adult now. I have to make decisions. I have to try and make this thing better. And by the way, us deciding not to do that, it allowed these fucking creeps and crooks to do it. That's it. So now you have a choice. And I, for one, am hopeful about that because that's the process of healing. That's actually how healing works. And I'm so glad that we're seeing this shit right now. And I'm so glad that we have the most transparently incompetent criminal crooks and creeps right now. And that's the way that it works. And we have to stop it. And we have to recognize it's going to be dangerous if we let it go. But we're incredibly fortunate that this shit is so transparent.
I mean, I continue to say, look, there are opportunities that are being presented inside of the obstacles that we are being shown. We need to, there's a part of me in the in and you talked about it, you named it something different. You reverse gratitude.
First gratitude.
Reverse gratitude is what you referred to it as. Because I say, I am grateful for Donald Trump and MAGA lifting the veil, right, of who America is. America is two things, right? It is both the hope and the joy and the belief that we can be better, right? If you want to call the head side Obama and the tail side Trump, both of these things are true. But the idea that we continue again to move through this perpetual adolescence where we give away our power to people that have created the language and and the architecture around holding on to their greed, right? Like, who said that they were the elite? They fucking did. And we believed it. And we regurgitated it over and over again. Who said that Elon Musk was a genius? Who said that Donald Trump was like the best businessman, right? They did. And then we regurgitated it over and over again, which allowed us, Jared, to give up, right? Our responsibility to give up our own power and to say, well, they know better, right? Because at the end of the day, whether we want to say it or not, right? A majority of the people in this country do want a daddy because it allows them not to have responsibility over their own lives, right? I'm just going with the flow. Right? I just keep my head down and do what I need to do. So long as I have a few creature comforts, I'm okay with it. And so when Donald Trump, when they come out and they openly say, and they openly call him daddy, we're disgusted. But I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that actually want that. They just don't want to say it. So if in fact, like, we actually have more power than we know and understand, right? If in fact we are the ones that are able to move, right, the course and the paths that we are on, then all of a sudden we can't continue to sit around twiddling our thumbs waiting for the night to come in and save us. Then all of a sudden the responsibility comes to who we're staring at in the mirror in order to do something that's different. And that is the place that we find ourselves in, where a lot of people don't want to have that power. They want to talk about it, right? They want the title,
Yep.
right? They want the creature comfort, but they don't actually want to do the fucking work. And so, I think that, again, for those of us who actually choose to live consciously, for those of us who actually do want to live awake, right? Who are actually woke and understand that that is a consistent and constant practice, because everything around us is built to pacify us and put us back to sleep.
Yes.
And so if we find ourselves here, eyes wide open, that, my God, this country has been one big Ponzi scheme, one big lie that has benefited a small group of people. And now we're at a place where they can't cover up their shit anymore. I mean, for the love of God, can I just express the obscenity of Mohammed bin Salam sitting in the fucking White House yesterday, knowing that that man is a fucking murderer and was the architect of 9/11, and Donald Trump is sitting there telling people, like, he's a good guy, let's not embarrass our guests. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm surprised that you could speak, because you're gargling his dick right now. Like that, and I'm sorry to be so obscene, but that's how it felt. I was surprised he could get a word out. Like, it is a constant just presentation of their obscene wealth and their obscene power and their obscene greed. And I'm like, and we cannot look away from it, right? Like we have got to actually see it, own our responsibility and how we got here, and then decide we don't want to be here anymore, right? Like that's where we need to be.
And I want to take your metaphor of the coins because that's the essence of America. I think all the time, I've always hated commercials. And I watch them. And, on one hand, I think that we're now divided between people who have forgotten that commercials are manipulative and the people who recognize that it is. I think about like commercials where it's like a car or like a piece of clothing. And it's like, you're an individual. You find your own way. You don't want to be told what to do. And meanwhile, what's it doing? It's selling you a mass-produced thing,
Mhm.
right? And it's doing it by telling you that you're something that you're not. And
Mhm.
but this got figured out at the turn of the 20th century. That was when psychological manipulation came into advertising, and they were like, "Oh, that's good for politics too." Right? That's when PR
Yeah.
came, and basically it was so effective because people want that. People say like these people think that they are warriors and individuals and all of this. And meanwhile, they're the biggest bootlickers who have ever existed in the
Mhm.
entire world. They are the biggest dick riders who have ever existed. Ever.
Like, let's just call
Seriously.
it what it is.
And what do? They suck up to powerful and wealthy people all day long, and they live this life. You brought up earlier about like cis white men. My God, they basically they live this script because it's easier to live the script because you're not going to be attacked, right? You're not going to like it's basically a cheat code on how to not be like called out for standing out is what it is.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then you have this thing that is occurring with MAGA and all of this. It's the most transparently weak shit imaginable. It's so fucking weak. And basically, people say to me all the time, they're like, "Can you believe that these supporters are supporting someone who's a pedophile criminal?" And it's like, have you ever been to church? Have you ever been involved in organized religion? Like one of the biggest sex abuse scandals that's ever existed was all of a sudden when we found out, oh my God, the Catholic Church has been hiding sexual abuse. The Catholic Church didn't fall apart. People
No.
didn't people didn't leave. Like
Nope.
some people did, but other people are like, oh, I'm sure that's one priest. It's not my priest. Oh, I'm sure it's this person. It's not my person. It happened in evangelicalism. When Jimmy
Mm.
Swaggart got up and told his audience, like, I have sinned, people didn't turn him off because it's easier to say, well, these things happen. It happens in cults. It happens in these groups. They're in a cult. And the reason they're in a cult, it's not because the cult leader gives them such a good speech or such a good sermon. It's because the cult leader tells them what they want to hear.
Yep.
It's because they need to not have agency.
Yes.
They need to not be afraid of doing things. That isn't to say that all religion is bad or spirituality is bad. It's when people don't want to think for themselves. They want to be given a script, and the script can say, oh, here are the things you can or can't do. It's in this book. Here are the things that you have to believe because Donald Trump and MAGA believes this. It is simply they want to follow orders because the fear of stepping outside of that is the biggest fear that a human has. And I'm not downplaying it because it is scary. And even the people like who are awake and aware of this, even people who are in recovery or healing, every day brings new trials. I'm gonna fuck up. You're not. I fuck up all the time. And the only thing you can do is say, man, I fucked up today. I'm going to try and do better today, or I'm going to try and do better tomorrow. And that is the most frightening thing because then you have to figure out who you are. And like that is the crux of this. You have a lot of people who don't want to figure out who they are. Because it scares them. It's absolutely terrifying to them, and I get it. But there has to be a sea change with that, and holding on to this dying system It is the most ultimate example of this because they can't imagine something outside of it because it will require them to change. That's it.
And again, I say this is precisely the reason why whiteness hates everything else around it. Because Black people have had to know who they are, have had to define who they are in the face of racism time and time and time again. Because if we were to just absorb the lies that are continued to be told about who we are, our culture, our intellect, our abilities, we would stay stuck, right? And so the very presence of us, right? The very presence of us, our brilliance, our exceptionalism, all of these things is an affront to the lies that they have continued to tell themselves about what it means to fall in line and follow the script. We were never a part of the play, right? We were never given lines. We were the furniture, right? So again, when you see these other outside groups be able to excel outside of the architecture, the infrastructure that they have created to maintain their lie, it is an affront to what they have created, right? And they can't face it. So what then do you have to do? You got to tear it all down because that's the only way that you can be. Toni Morrison say, if in fact you can only be tall by standing on someone else's back, what does that say about you? When you take racism away, she says, are you any good? Do you even like yourself? Right? And so again, that's what we're seeing in real time. And that's why you have the tearing down of DEI, the tearing down of trans people, the anti-Blackness, the anti-this, the anti-that. Because they can't hold on because the lie is slipping out of their hands. And you never recognize how dangerous people are until their backs are up against the wall.
And I want to say, and I'm so glad that you put it that way. I grew up in really violent, abusive households. And you know what changed my perception of what happened to me? It was when I realized that violence isn't strength, violence is cowardice. It's weakness. And I look at this landscape now, and I look at the promise that's occurring. Like, and to make it clear for people who don't know, they literally want to throw women out of work. They literally
Yes.
want to take women out of the workforce. And why? Because women have adapted to the modern workforce more than men. And men are cowardly now. And men are brittle now. They literally are so mad about things like DEI and affirmative action because they want it. They want the people that they would compete with taking out of the economy. Now let's go ahead and add that to what it is that we're seeing, Danielle. What happens when the elite and the powerful are stocked with incompetent, incapable people? Shit breaks. Like when people get jobs because of how they were born or the wealth they were born with or the color of their skin or because they were born a man or whatever, eventually that rigged system creates shit. There's nothing new here. There's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing new here except for the violence of cowardly, afraid, insecure men.
Yep.
That's it. And by the way, why were they abusing children, Danielle? They were abusing children because children are vulnerable.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole secret of this thing. It was an expression of the thing that got them to their place of power in the first place. They didn't stake out on their own. They didn't do something new. Tell me one innovation that Donald Trump has created in his entire life.
I keep asking that question. What have-
What did he
what has it created?
What is his great legacy besides failing into the White House? That's it. That's all he's got. And it has been a program of failing upwards over and over and over again. And I want to say something, and I get emotional when I talk about this, Danielle, because I really want to put it in perspective. What would we have right now if we had an actual meritocracy? If we actually had a system where the most talented people were able to create art, were
Mhm.
able to engage in science, were able
Mhm.
to engage in politics, able to engage in anything, what have we lost? You
Mm.
know what I mean? Like, because the great gift of this moment is looking around and saying, "Wow, the lie doesn't work anymore." And to have allegiance to the current system that we have is to be like, pedophilia is okay. Well, it's not really pedophilia. They're 15-year-old girls. It's a different thing. Right? Oh, no, it's not theft if you're doing it through this. It's not corruption if you're doing this. Those people deserve to be destroyed. It's okay that Trump hung out with MBS. There's money to be made. So your allegiance to a thing that doesn't work, it's all fantasy at this point. Now we have to ask the question, what kind of a world would we be living in if it wasn't rigged like this?
Yeah.
How many people have died that could have given gifts to humanity? How much more could we have as opposed to settling for this slop, for
Mm.
these dignities? And it comes down to a simple question, which is, and this is the hard part I think that everybody has to ask, which is, what is there to gain if you let go of this familiar hell?
Yep.
And the familiar hell keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So where is it that we could go? And what is it that we've already lost? And what will we not stomach anymore losing?
I mean, that's the thing, Jared, is that we need in this time, this is why it is so critical, as we say over and over again, to take care of yourself, because we have got to increase our imagination. We have got to expand our imagination in this moment. And it's so difficult to do when you're terrified, right?
Yes.
How can you dream when you're scared? Right? The way that we're able to dream is from a place of peace. This is the adaptability that we have to make in this moment, is that at a time of increased and escalated violence and terror is our opportunity to say, I don't want to live like this. What does it look like not to participate in this? What does it look like to create something different? And if I create something different, what does that look like? I don't have to settle, right? I don't have to be given the crumbs that the Democratic establishment continues to tell me should satiate me. I want more. And what does that more look like, right? Like, these are the things that their purposeful strategy around fear and anxiety is robbing us of the ability to do. We need to dream
Yep.
in this moment. We need to imagine, right? We need to close our eyes and say, oh my God, this place is broken. So if I could rearrange or blow things up, right? And now I have this deep, gorgeous, like fertile ground. What do I want to plant? What do I want? What do I want it to sprout? So we have to see that we have been robbed in so many ways,
Yep.
and we have got to take our power back. And to me, that comes from a place of being able to dream.
And I will say, just to finish the analogy and to go with what you're saying, when is the domestic abuser the most dangerous? It's
When the
when,
person is about to leave.
and that's what this is. What this is.
Mm.
And it is about destroying the ability to imagine something else. And it has gotten to the point where we and if you look at the numbers, Danielle, and you want to like really like feel powerful and hopeful about this, everyone knows. Everyone knows. It's like 20 to 25% of the population doesn't get it, right? 20 to 25% of the
Yeah.
population, they're in a cult. And some of them are going to leave the cult and some of them are going to continue drinking the Kool-Aid,
Mm.
right? They'll go down with the ship.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that 20 or 25% outside the damage that they can do to us and the violence that they can commit. Everybody else, as I get a spam call, everybody else recognizes that not only is MAGA an affront and is it bullshit, they also recognize that everything else is bullshit. They recognize that massive change and reform is necessary. That means, again, spam risk, that means that those people like that are in denial of it, they're not our allies It's the rest of us that understand it. That's it. And there's more of us than there are them, and they're becoming more desperate. And so that is that feeling that you're talking about. And we can either use that spam won't stop. They will either like drag us down with them, or we're going to get out and imagine something new. Period.
Mhm.
And we have to we can't freeze with it because we're stuck between, oh my God, this is scary and hard, or we have to like take action. And that's where we are at this point.
Yeah, we have to take action. And, there are going to be so many people that say, well, what does that action look like? Because again, they're looking to somebody to spoon feed them, right? And what I say is that what does the action look like for you, right? What does it look like to start to regain your power? What does it look like to start to piece a life together that you actually want to live and not one that people are telling you that you should live? What does that look like for you, right? Stop looking for somebody to save you, right? We are in the phase of this where eyes wide open, we got to save ourselves, right? And so you're recognizing, you're saying, you had 23 billionaires spend $22 million so that Zoran Mamdani couldn't provide hope that we could be better and live better and do something different. That's what that was.
Can I say something about that real fast? Because this hasn't been brought up in any circles. Because you just brought up a really good point. Did they spend all that money because they didn't think that he could get things done?
No, they spent all that money because they don't want him to get anything done.
There it is. Everyone's like, oh, he can't get these things done, and oh, he'll do that. Did they do it because they were afraid he would be incompetent? No, they did it because
No.
there's a possibility he could change things.
Right. And this was so wonderful. Apparently, the people that were talking about Zoran and saying, oh my God, 9/11, oh my God, Muslims, oh my God, this, that, and the other thing, seemed real fucking silent yesterday when the architect of 9/11, the architect of the dismembering of Jamal Khashoggi, was literally sitting in the White House. They weren't talking about the scary Muslim then, the one that is actually fucking terrifying, right? They weren't talking about that then. No, it's only when you have a democratic socialist that wants to build a more equitable, right, city and society, then all of a sudden you
Right.
want to amp up the fear. But the person that you should actually be terrified of, that literally has the president of the United States on a leash, oh, everyone seemed to have lost their voices.
It's pretty incredible when you start paying attention. It really is. Like to how these things work, and that's simply the point. It's been such selective memory and such chosen amnesia, but you start seeing it, and it's obvious, and we're lucky for that. That's
Yes.
the thing about this moment. We're very, very lucky. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that this thing is like a slam dunk and everything's going to be totally fine. There's a lot of work to do, a lot of fighting to do, but it is a matter of the first thing is noticing.
I mean, that's the thing too, just with the couple of minutes that we have left, is to me there are stages of consciousness, right? Like for those that are deep into different type of psychology, psychotherapy, whether you're studying like quantum physics and all of these different things, because to me all of these they're all connected, right? There are stages to the consciousness, there are stages seeing the connectivity. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it, which is why people prefer to bury their heads in the sand. Again, because it comes back to personal responsibility. What are you doing with what you've seen and heard? Right? And if you're choosing to do nothing, what does that say about who you are? So the first stage to me is awareness, right? So once we are aware of the systems that are at play, that the systems are rigged, right, for a small group of people, right? Then the next level is like, what does it look like to then build community outside of these systems that have only been built to oppress us? I thought about this the other day, Jared. I said, we have allowed ourselves to be okay with the idea that we work ourselves to death for 40 years. And if we're lucky, we get 5 to 10 years of retirement before we drop dead. And that is just like, that's the norm. That's what it means to be an American. You work for 40 and maybe you get 10, maybe. And most people do not, because guess what has gone down in the last 5 years? Oh, I don't know. Our life expectancy. So if you are retiring at 65, but now life expectancy is at 73, you're not even getting the fucking decade. But we've made that the norm. Like, that's okay.
And why are we doing it? I want to just make one more note here. Danielle, what is what is the topic du jour when it comes to young white men right now? They're so afraid to meet people. They're so afraid to talk to women that they will be rejected or that they'll be a creep and hurt them and whatever. What we're doing at this point is we're counterbalancing whether or not we deserve to live better lives because people are so fragile that they can't even imagine going over and talking to a member of the opposite sex. That's it. It comes down to that. We're literally in a tug of war of life over whether or not you and I and the people we care about deserve to have basic human dignity and deserve to live decent lives and not be stalked and not be destroyed and not be exploited and not be abused versus people who are so afraid of even talking to another human being that they don't. And what technology is being deployed right now? Technology where they won't have to, and technology that will fawn over them, a president who will fawn over them, an entire media and economic infrastructure that will tell them that they're okay and they're good. They're babies in a fucking crib. And the
Mm.
rest of us are trying to say, me and the people I care about don't deserve to suffer like this. And on the other side of it are people who are so cowardly that they can't even open their mouths to talk to another person.
Mm,
That's
mm,
the
mm.
essence of this thing.
Just wild.
It's wild.
Just wild. And this is, I mean, this is why we come together every week to have these conversations, because like it is wild. Like this isn't it is we are in a wild time. But
Wild.
I try desperately to hold on to this idea that there is still opportunity
There
here,
is.
right? That there is, when they domesticate animals and domesticate, spaces, we need to rewild ourselves, right? Like, again, this dreaming, this rewilding, this like, let go of the chains, right? And the systems that we've been holding on to, that we think that if we just hold on tight enough, we'll be okay. Like, let go.
It's a real problem when you love your chains. It's a real
When you think they're jewelry.
and when you think that your chains. Danielle, I missed you so much last week. I'm glad we got to do this. I
Same
would
here.
do this. I would do this for a long time, but we got to go. Busiest woman in show business. So we got to get out of here. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Absolutely. I am just, I'm so grateful that we reconvene, folks. This is the largest number, this is the biggest audience we've had. So folks, if you have not subscribed to both of our channels, please do so. This is independent media. So hit that subscribe and, continue to be a part of the conversation in the community. We appreciate all of you.
My friend, have a good week.
You too.